It's Colonel Mustard in the ballroom with the sex tape. I went back to WikiLeaks today to see if I could throw more light on my Tony Blair theory in regard to the dodgy dossier being a stalking horse to derail Brexit, and found myself looking for details on Windrush Ventures No. 3 Limited Partnership, which is Tony Blair's company and appears in the footer of his emails. The name Windrush is interesting as it is half the name of the ship which famously brought black Caribbeans to Britain in 1948, who either came to break a bus strike or rebuild post-war Britain, depending on your point of view. A quick Google search brought up this article, linked below, from the Tax Research blog, which points out the odd company structure of Windrush Ventures. It was set up in 2009 using the 1907 Limited Companies Act rather than the 2000 Act, which was passed when Tony Blair was Prime Minister. Another oddity is that there is only one shareholder, presumably Tony Blair, and that there are tax disadvantages to this arrangement as opposed to being, say, a sole trader. However, there is one big advantage: secrecy. And curiously, there is a parallel company, Fire Rush, that was set up 2 weeks after Windrush. There is a limit to the revenue a company can make before more detailed accounts have to be publicly declared, and by having two companies, this doubles the limit and allows the money to be moved between them, thus avoiding disclosure, which is clever. That reminded me to go and have a look at Tony Blair's mate and anti-Brexiteer Peter Mandelson to see what his companies are up to, as the Prince of Darkness is always up to something. Some may remember his role in the sale of British Steel to Tata, which was obviously done for the sake of the workers and not his fee, or to help another of his mates, Peter Hain, who was under pressure in his Neath constituency due to the parliamentary expenses scandal and undeclared donations when running for deputy leader of the Labour Party. His predicament was made worse by the threatened closure of the steelworks, so it was nice of Peter to step in and arrange the sale of the British steel industry and secure all those Labour seats. One forgets the amount of scandal Hain got into, linked below, and while not scandalous, it is funny to revisit his tweet urging people to buy his book about Mandela as Mandela lay dying on his deathbed. Still, as pleasant as it was to remember just how sleazy the Blair-Brown Labour government was, in searching details of Mandelson's company, I happened across this interesting tidbit from 2014, linked below. Lord Mandelson, the former Labour Business Secretary, faces calls to surrender his directorship of Sistema, a large Russian conglomerate. The post is thought to pay around £200,000 a year plus a share of profits. Sistema is the majority shareholder in RTI, a defence technology company which produces radars and satellite communications. It has won major Russian state contracts to build a land-based missile early warning system and provided IT for the Sochi Olympics, which had me wondering, given the noble lord's liking for collected fees from international business deals, if he had anything to do with this other piece of news from 2014, linked below. Defence chiefs are preparing to sign a deal that would see British defence companies working jointly on projects with the Russian arms industry. The treaty allows arms companies to buy kit from the Russians, and a Russian diplomatic sources said they hope one day to see British soldiers carrying the Red Army's famous Kalashnikov rifle. The former article is from April 2014. The latter article is from January 2014, and in between, the horsewoman of the apocalypse, Victoria Newland, under February's gloomy skies, rolled into Kiev with a box of donuts, declared fuck the EU, and thus we get the present position of which Tory MP Christian Blunt laments, for a peacetime political relationship, it's about as bad as it could get with regard to the current situation with Russia. So well done, Miss Noodleman. Bravo. Now, either Mr. Blunt is back on the poppers, or he is unaware that Hillary Clinton's relationship with Viktor Pinchuk might not be such a great idea. Link below. As an aside, it amuses me that this spinning of the diplomatic compass is over a region containing the cursed magnetic anomaly. I'm just saying. But back to the dodgy dossier. According to The Sun, Christopher Steele was commissioned to prepare the document by a Washington-based political research firm, Fusion GPS, in June 2016 for a fee of £130,000, at which point the story devolves into "it is thought" and a security source said. So let me ask the obvious question. Is there an American embassy in Moscow? Hang on. The Ukraine girls really knock me out. They leave the West behind. Yes. US Embassy in Moscow, Bolshoi Devyatsinsky, Perol-E Look 8, Moscow 121099. So, we can send them a postcard, and we can make a reasonable assumption that within that building there will be spies. And if you have spies, you will also have ex-spies. And no doubt some of them will be in Washington. So, why would a Washington-based secure political research firm hire someone in London? If they wanted to dig the dirt, why wouldn't they hire someone in Moscow? Okay, perhaps the idea was to tap into the émigré Russian community in London. After all, the Independent and the Evening Standard are owned by Alexander Lebedev. Or perhaps the aim is to drag London, and by extension the British government, into whatever game is being played. It would be interesting to know precisely when in June this approach was made. Was it before or after the Joe Cox murder, which as an aside bears a striking resemblance to the Anna Lint murder? Link below. But regardless, in July, what is described as a democratic funder took over payment, and then in November Steele was supposed to have been so worried about what he had found that he worked on the project for nothing. At the risk of being accused of taking some of Crispin Blunt's poppers, I fail to see what Steele could have found that was so shocking. As to recap on the few names already mentioned, we have a British ex-minister of trade on the board of a Russian arms company, a Russian oligarch running 2 British newspapers, a US presidential candidate selling uranium to the Russians and facilitating a Ukrainian steel magnate to sell oil pipelines to Iran and in the US. Oh, and a quasi-fascist government in Ukraine. Also, in none of the coverage has anyone said anything about any of the financial stuff contained within the dossier. It has all been about prostitutes weeing on a bed, with the occasional claim about hentai porn. And seeing as that has now been revealed, it's not much use as blackmail. Though of course there are dark hints about other tapes of a sexual nature. And all of this is alleged to have happened in a hotel room owned by an American corporation, which is hardly great advertising for them. I mean, you save up for a holiday and the next thing you know, the Ritz-Carlton have videoed you pulling off a fast one while telling the bathroom mirror how handsome you are. Speaking of which, Miss Hungry for Publicity, arf, has crawled out of the woodwork to claim that Donald Trump invited her to his hotel room after the Miss Universe pageant, no doubt for a romp on his waterbed, arf, and she has proof that her story is true. She has his business card. He was standing in the middle of a group of bodyguards. He grabbed my hand. He pulled me towards himself. He asked me, "Who are you?" Clearly she wasn't wearing her sash. And then the Mail goes on to rehash old stories like Miss Arizona, Tasha Dixon, who competed in 2001, claims that Trump, who owned the pageant, first introduced himself to the contestants by coming backstage unannounced while they were all in the process of changing their clothes. Our first introduction to him was when we were in the dress rehearsal and half naked changing our bikinis. The sly fox. Right, so back to the dossier. According to the Independent, and remember, this is supposed to be a serious newspaper, Steele was frustrated because the FBI were looking into Hillary Clinton's emails and not bothering with his research into Trump. Wait a minute. Let me read that again. Oh, and you see a guy reach for stars in the sky. No, it really does say that. So, I think I've solved the mystery of Steele's disappearance. He's up his own arse, no doubt with Christian Blunt's poppers. Anywho, of more interest is the Times claim senior ministers were told of the document last month at a meeting to discuss how they should go about building relations with the new Trump administration. Note the operative word, told. They weren't shown it, they were told about it. And come to think of it, this is getting more and more like the Danish cartoons all the time, and I half suspect the bedwetting claims are akin to the man in the pig mask or the bad Photoshop of a man shagging a dog that was slipped into the file after the cartoons were printed on the front page of an Egyptian newspaper without the slightest reaction, leading to the Committee of Profit Honouring hawking them around the Middle East trying to find someone to get offended. As you might expect, the senior ministers decided not to mention it, as it, might cause a diplomatic fuss. What with Britain seeking a post-Brexit trade deal and to sort out the post-Brexit arrangements on security and sharing of intelligence and whatnot. I mean, those giant golf balls over on the far moor, they're not there in case Rumbold the Giant returns and fancies a game of pitch and putt. And it just so happens that rather than Theresa May and the New Zealand Prime Minister Bill English fielding questions on similar post-Brexit issues at their shared press conference, she had to deal with the missing Mr. Steele and the dodgy dossier, which would add credence to my theory that this file is less about Trump than it is intended to derail Brexit negotiations when Theresa May visits Washington this month, which, on the face of things, appear to be going rather well. Indeed, so well that the Dutch Deputy Prime Minister has warned that there will need to be measures to stop Britain becoming a tax haven, linked below, which rather flies in the face of the BBC claims of banks fleeing Britain due to Brexit. And no, I'm not saying that it's the only purpose. It obviously has implications within US politics, but I would suggest this dossier is of far less importance than the memes of Trump is literally Hitler and a threat to democracy Should he pursue prosecution of the Clintons, or Comey, or Loretta Lynch, or Holocaust survivor George Soros? Though, thinking about it, there is a connection to the Hitler files prepared during the war that allege that he was a coprophiliac and have eternally muddied the water about how many testicles he had. And one last thing, well, after first mentioning that the man whom John McCain claims tortured him is now an amateur ballroom dancer, link below. One last thing. The Mail has this snippet about Sir Anthony Wood, Tony Blair's one-time advisor. Sir Andrew, I don't know why I keep calling him Anthony, he's Sir Andrew. Sir Andrew told McCain it contained claims about Trump's links to the Russians and his sexual behaviour, and that the US politician then sought out a copy himself from elsewhere. One of his aides was instructed to look for a man with a copy of the Financial Times, and that's how the individuals met, with the source saying taking McCain's emissary back to his house and giving the American a copy of the documents, which rather suggests everyone knew the claims in the document were of little significance, and in order to make it seem of any importance, it had to be wrapped in a packaging of mystery. Oh, and they had to find someone daft enough to be taken in by a quick game of Harry Lime. Come on down, John McCain. Right, I'm off to find my missus, who I will know because she's smoking 2 cigarettes, to see if she'll make us a cup of tea.